Star Cowboys podcast. I'm Kevin Turner. We have Saad Youssef. We have Kent Garrison. We will soon have Father Jon Machota coming to you Sunday evening after the Cowboys' 24-21 victory over the Philadelphia Eagles. The Cowboys come back from a 21-point deficit, one of the worst first halves of football you will ever see, and have a very exciting home win. Now 5-5-1, and looking at the good times on Thursday against the Kansas City Chiefs. Saad, let's start out with this. Will this go down in history as the George Pickens game?
Yeah, I think so, because he's had other really good plays, really good catches, and all that kind of stuff. But you have to kind of do it in a game that has significant meaning. And I think for multiple reasons. I think he's had in this game, he had the spectacular catches. He had the big catches and big moments. And to be honest, to his benefit, CD had a really bad game. And so I think that elevates his game even more. So, yeah, I do think this goes down as the George Pickens game. I mean, it was quite literally the perfect game for him. 9 targets, 9 catches, 146 yards, caught a touchdown. It was, I mean, I've kind of joked in passing in the last few weeks about, is George Pickens the number one receiver and is CD the number 2? But on this day, that was truly the case. And I think a phenomenal performance by him, just the full George Pickens experience.
Yeah, and when this game started off kind of poorly for the Cowboys, I mean, they got the ball first and decided to go for it around midfield on 4th and 3. There's our big first, coaching decision of the night for Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, very first drive of the game, 4th and 3 around midfield. But I kind of like that. This is something that you and I talked about, earlier in the season. And now it's like, well, I'm not just going to let the defensive reinforcements and stomping the Raiders change. Like, I like that aggressive mentality. Just didn't work out. You ended up having to punt. How did you feel about that decision on the first drive of the game?
Yeah, I loved it, and I still love it. Even though they didn't get it, I still love it. You got to do that 10 out of 10 times. And KT, I know we usually go chronologically, but I kind of want to talk about this topic here for a second in terms of the coaching decision. Look, on that 4th down, like, you should go for that 10 out of 10 times. I think that was a good decision. Now, the end of the game, it was a different story, both in terms of going for it and the timeout usage. Both were a little spotty for me towards the end. I thought, obviously, they won the game, so it bails out a lot of questions. But I feel like the reason we talked about Schottenheimer having to go for it around midfield on 4th and short every time is because we're talking about having a feel of the team and a feel of the game. When your defense is literally locking them down and you have a chance to go up by 3 points late in the game, I think you have to take it. I don't look at that situation necessarily as Schottenheimer just the most egregious decision. I understand what he's trying to do there. I just don't think that was the right decision, though, at the end there to go for it instead of kick the field goal. But to your point, at the beginning of the game, absolutely, you gotta go for that. It doesn't matter what the result is.
And I think what you're talking about, the timeouts at the end of the game, very much a problem. We escape with the win and we're good. But I do think it was saying something that it's week 12. And I think it's kind of the first time all year that I've really questioned Brian Schottenheimer's clock management and game management and stuff. And I felt like I was doing that once a month in the McCarthy era. So I don't know why he took those timeouts, though, especially the second, his final timeout with 50 seconds left when the Eagles have 3 timeouts left. I mean, the Eagles were the ones who were sitting there kind of in purgatory, not knowing if they're going to get the ball back or not. You're kind of in control of the situation. I think you can let the clock tick down as far as you want right there. You're in good shape, especially knowing you have Brandon Aubrey. I mean, clearly you want to get as close as you can for your kicker there. But yeah, very questionable. And I'm sure he'll have a couple of days worth of answering questions about that stuff, and having to figure out all that. But you look at this game, it comes down to a lot of penalties, a lot of turnovers, a lot of mistakes. I mean, the fact that you could overcome as many mistakes as you have, crucial mistakes, the Turpin fumble, Jadeveon Clowney jumping off sides on 3rd and 10 where you get a stop, but you replay the down and it's 3rd and 5. You can go on and on and on, but it kind of ended up, evening out in the second half. You have the punt muff, which ended up being huge, but not, you weren't able to capitalize with points on that. And then, it's funny, like Turpin fumble, Gibson muff on the punt. Dude, the best player in the league, one of the best players, in the league, Saquon Barkley with the fumble, they were in Cowboys territory at the time, just huge, and you end up getting the ball. And then you just can't say enough about Dak. Under pressure when it mattered most was huge tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think when you look at it, it was kind of similar. This Eagles game kind of reminded me to the first Eagles game of the season, that's kind of what happened. But we kept saying, it was the rain weather stoppage that kind of, changed the dynamics of the game later in that one. This time it was all the Cowboys. And I think the defense really was something that, we have to judge the defense in two different ways. Whatever happened before the Raiders game and whatever happens after. Not because of any other reason other than there's just been so much personnel change. You talked about Saquon Barkley and how the Cowboys were able to hold him. I mean, there was a play there where it was a swing pass to the left in the second half, and Overshown got over there and just completely boxed him in and locked him down for a 0-yard gain. I think those are plays that, they didn't have those horses doing it, making those plays. You didn't have Overshown. You didn't have Quentin Williams. You didn't have all these other guys. So I think we're going to be look back at this defense and see it as a tale of two halves in terms of the season.
I also think this was the Oso Digizua game on defense. I thought he was amazing all game long, and he's going to get credit for a really big play that he made, getting a sack there late in the game. But he had a really good first half too. And it's that whole thing, I think, where Quentin Williams comes in and changes the dynamic of everything too. Good players, really, really, really elite players just raise everyone else's game so much. And we're seeing that a lot in Green Bay, where Rashawn Gary's having a huge year. He's always been a really good player, having a huge year now. And you're having some other guys, you're seeing this completely now. Oso Digizua, Kenny Clark had a good game. And a lot of people jumped out. I mean, Elijah Clark's going to get credit for coming in and having a big hit. Marquise Bell and Sam Williams, getting the fumble with Saquon Barkley. There's a lot of, names we can use. Donovan Wilson made a couple plays, really not allowing Jalen Hurts to go crazy. So really good. And it does change things. And it makes me wonder where you are on just how for real are we talking here? I know it's tough, and you're just 5-5-1, and you still have a high percentage chance of making the playoffs. And you really had a garbage first half with a lot of mistakes. But you look at that defense and go, well, I'm not completely scared of punting now. When I used to go, a punt is 7 points to the other team.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the only reason why I'm coming back up a little bit on, what the destiny is for this season is a combination of the way the Cowboys are playing, but also how the schedule is looking. It's funny. We're in the gauntlet area of the schedule. They're 1-0 in the gauntlet. Coming up next is the Kansas City Chiefs, who look pretty vulnerable, even though they beat the Indianapolis Colts just all season long. They've looked pretty vulnerable in their season. And then the Lions, it took overtime and an all-time game from Jahmyr Gibbs for them to squeeze by the New York freaking Giants in overtime. and then after that, you're looking at the Minnesota Vikings, and I don't know that it's completely unfathomable for the Cowboys to go 3-1 in this stretch, which, if you asked me before the season, I would say 1-3 at best. But they already have that one win under their belt. And say they lose to the Chiefs or the Lions, I think you definitely beat the Vikings. And you just got to split those middle two games. Yeah, I mean, if you come out of that, and then depending on how the rest of the conference looks and how they come out of it, I don't think that I'm well below 50% on this season ending in the postseason, probably 30-40%, but I was probably around 2%. Before the game, and certainly in the third quarter. So yeah, I do feel like there's something that could be salvaged here if they turn things around for real.
Yeah, and I think, like, look, there's a lot of things. We know what the offense is, or at least we have a good feel for what the offense is. And George Pickens, obviously, huge night. 9 catches, 146 yards, had that touchdown early. CeeDee Lamb was not exactly on the same page with Dak. He was targeted 11 times, only had 4 catches for 75 yards. You saw Jake Ferguson come through. That fumble was a little scary right there on that final drive as the ball squirts out of bounds and got lucky. I think what's going to end up being a talking point, it is a short week, but I think what is going to be a talking point is the George Pickens thing. And obviously, Jerry talked about it after the game. That's going to continue to be a thing. This is the first time, and I know what we're coming off of on the Monday night game where he was suspended for the first series of the game and had an untimely penalty. But today was the first time where I was like, yeah, you kind of got to do everything you can do to have him here because it matters that much. And I underestimated what he was too, because you didn't get to see this version of him in Pittsburgh. You saw it in little short bursts here and there, but you didn't get to see this. And him and Dak have it going on. And now that just makes you good. In the NFC, that makes you, like, I know people are not going to say that. Having those two guys with Dak and a passable defense makes you a contender in the NFC, because no one's running away with the NFC. So I think this has to get done. And I know Jerry had some words about it that we can get to if you want later. But today was the day when it finally hit me, like, it's a must now. It's got to get done.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys need to have a very definitive conversation with the front office and coaching staff of what exactly the plan is and what the identity of the team is. I think that's the thing that I think we both talked about, and I think we've all talked about this. Everything just feels really random and scattered sometimes. It's like sometimes it feels like, you're going to build all this around Dak and the offense or Dak and whatever, and then you don't give him any weapons. And all of a sudden there's nothing around him. I'm talking about last season or, things like that. Then suddenly you finally give him a number 2 receiver. You finally have a running game that works. And your kind of defense was centered around a pass rusher. So you need to get up ahead, and then you need to be able to tee off on the quarterback. Well, now the defensive identity has shifted, and now you're stopping the run, and the pass rush is something that's going to be a fluid conversation, a fluid situation. To me, I'm with you. I think they need George Pickens, but we also should have the disclaimer out there that, as we've said before, this is George Pickens at his absolute best. This is George Pickens months after the team that drafted him said, we're out of this, even though you're a very talented guy. It's when he's in a contract year. It's when he has Dak Prescott playing at an MVP level. So I don't really have any doubts about needing George Pickens here beyond 2025, but I think the conversation is still valid if you want to have it on a franchise tag, if you want to have it long-term. If you do have it on a franchise tag, what kind of mood is that going to put George Pickens in? How is he going to be in the building and around the team? These are all very valid conversations. So, yeah, I think I agree with you, but there's a lot more nuance to it than just here's the blank check, hand him the deal.
9 carries for 43 yards in the first half for Javonte Williams. Not like a huge half, but something did hit me during this game, and it was really in the second half when the offense kind of got going a little bit early, moving the ball a little bit. And obviously, you had that interception down at the, in the end zone, or you had an interception, you had a missed field goal. So you had some more opportunities that you didn't really take advantage of as well. Really, the interception and getting stuffed at the 1 on the 4th down to Jake Ferguson. There's 2 drives where you were down there and you didn't score, and then the missed field goal from Brandon Aubrey. So we're talking about a hypothetical 17 points you left out there. But one thing that did hit me, and then I just pulled up, the Eagles, all their stats. But one thing that hit me is, like, having the running game be passable, which we've had a couple weeks where it wasn't that great. The Arizona game comes to mind and things like that. Getting that going and mixing that in and everything. And I don't think, like, I'm not a big believer in, like, you got to throw it this many times and you got to run it this many times. But Javonte Williams had a really good game, in pass protection, but 20 carries for 87 yards. but there, and the run game was always a threat. And you go to the Eagles, man, the Eagles, they gave the ball to Saquon 10 times on the ground for 22 yards. They were clearly trying to get A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith going, A.J. Brown specifically, because he's been the most verbal. And they did that. But I know they didn't try to run the ball a ton in this game. And I think the Cowboys offense, you really see how good it can be when all facets are working. I know how generic that sounds, but it's such an easy thing to get away from when you're down 21-0. I mean, how many times have we talked about you got to play from ahead? And they tried to, first drive, going for it, 4th and 3 at midfield. I do think that was something that I was really impressed with, not really forcing the issue. It's 21-0, staying in it and grinding away, because the Eagles have shown time and time again this year, their offense will go dormant for a half. They did this last year too. It's so frustrating. And it's why no one takes them as seriously as they probably should. And I was just really impressed with that aspect of Shoddy, despite some of the game management questions towards the end.
Yeah, no, that definitely. I think what you're talking about, though, about the Eagles in terms of the way that they approach the offense, I think this is a trend that we're going to have to kind of watch for a little bit here, because last week the Raiders didn't even try to run the ball. I think it was over 20 pass plays in the first half to like 3 called runs. And then the same thing today. And this is with, I know it's a little bit of a banged up offensive line for Philly, but it's Saquon Barkley, it's Jalen Hurts, and they really didn't try to run the ball. Now, is that just, the other team making that decision, or is there something to the whole Quinnen Williams and the situation you have at defensive tackle and all that? Because in both situations, the Raiders could have chosen to run the ball. They didn't even try. I don't think they would have been successful because they have literally no offensive line. But the Eagles could have possibly been successful. They just didn't even try to do it. So, yeah, I think that's going to be a conversation that as we move forward. Next, you have Patrick Mahomes coming in, but their running game is decent if, they get Pacheco back, and Kareem Hunt is a solid runner as well. So, I think that's going to be something that's going to be worth watching as well. But yeah, I think overall the Cowboys defense has been very much passable the last 2 games.
You can see how game planning and watching tape for a team, you'd go, Kenny Clark, Oso Odighizuwa, Quinnen Williams, we're not going to run right into that all day long. Like, I think that you're bringing up a good point. And you're also going, who's Kalen Carson? Yeah, we'll go at him. They're running Donovan Wilson out there. Like, it's very easy to be like, well, we're going to throw it on them because that's their weak link and that's what they're going to do. But, like, I do think that really behooves the Cowboys to know a lot. And that's where you're saying, I mean, geez, we're seeing a huge step forward in the last month from Donovan Izaraku. We're hearing Dante Fowler's name every now and then. Things that were just like non-existent. And there were times where you like would have wanted a little bit more of a pass rush, but you got it at times tonight as well. And I know Lane Johnson was out and, they've had some problems on their offensive line and stuff like that. But I mean, I think you're seeing it come together, and it does feel too late. But go in on Thursday against the Chiefs and talk to me, and we can't start dreaming about some January football, because I don't. The offense is going to score. I mean, it's what, when you're down 21-0 and people are tweeting about tanking, like you cannot tank with this team. That offense is going to score.
Yeah. And Katie, I want to ask you this. What's the biggest regular season win for the Cowboys before this? I mean, to me, this is one of the biggest ones in recent memory. I can't think of one that comes to mind in the last 2 years.
Biggest one in the Brian Schottenheimer era for sure.
No doubt.
I think expectations were raised very high in the McCarthy era because of 3 straight 12-win seasons. And then obviously in his last year, you didn't get what you wanted, and hence he's not here anymore. So like to say like a big win that mattered. I mean, if you look at last year, dude, they were grinding so hard. They were 3-7 at one point and just trying to stay afloat, and they ended up 7-10. I would have to go back to the 2023 season, and
even then, you laid a big egg in San Francisco that year. I don't know. I mean, I guess the Rams. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's hard to even. How about winning the night you beat the Detroit Lions in
Yeah,
2023? The big, Dan Campbell goes for two and
yeah.
all that. The Taylor Decker game.
The other
Uh,
reason the other reason though why this game felt such a big win, not only because of the stakes and what the season and the opponent and everything, it's just there was a lot wrong with this game. Like from the Cowboys side, there's a lot that you can nitpick. You already mentioned about leaving basically 17 points on the field. CD Lamb had a really bad game. There were some decisions from Schottenheimer that I thought were very questionable. Not just I'm talking about timeout usage or fourth down, but even down there, you didn't even try to run the ball at all on that final sequence when you did go for it. Down there, didn't even try to run the ball. There was plenty of stuff, and the fact that all of that happened and you still managed to pull out a win, I think that's what made this win so impressive to me.
I mean, dude, you can go on and on and on. I mean, the Turpin fumble, again, the Clowney thing we mentioned earlier, the missed field goal by Brandon Aubrey, which never happens.
Right, that too, yeah.
And I was screaming like, dude, you paid a fullback. Let's use him down here. You have four downs here. Like, let's use him. Tyler Guyton had that awful false start to push you back from the one, Tyler Guyton had a really good game against Las Vegas, and Tyler Guyton did not have a good game today. There's some also, I thought there were some penalties that were, I think both sides would have plenty of arguments about flags. Everyone got flagged a lot. I wrote this down and I didn't want to really get to it because I don't want to nitpick this, but this is something. And I think it's something like moving forward, we should watch. The Cowboys over the last 5 years, okay, 2021, first in penalties. 2022, they were fourth. 2023, they were third. 2024, they were sixth in penalties. Coming into today, this year, they were fifth. And that's something, I held against McCarthy, but I guess it's time to probably shift that criticism over to Uncle Shoddy if we're going to do that. Like, they are consistently a top six penalized team in football since 2021. Now, you can get around that, and it helps, like, they got CeeDee Lamb, who was, quite frankly, he was asked today, had a big drop in the end zone, had a drop over the middle. It would have been a first down, but he had a couple penalties that were a lot of pass interference yards that really helped on one drive there. But like, I do think that at some point we do have to kind of go, what's really happening here on the penalties?
To me, it's more of a player thing than McCarthy or Schottenheimer because to me, I remember this being a big topic of conversation and going back and researching. McCarthy's players in Green Bay were not a top penalized team throughout his whole tenure with the Packers, which I'm sure better than I do. Like, it wasn't egregious throughout his entire tenure there. So to me, it's something about the players here, and that's the problem. A lot of it is just fundamental stuff. Like some of the Tyler Guyton penalties, they're not things that you necessarily have to be coached up for. It's very basic stuff. It's not complicated. So yeah, that's something they do have to fix and figure out. But like I said, the fact that they were able to win despite all that, that's a testament to them.
Yeah, and again, second half defense, huge. 21-7 at halftime and 3 and out. And then, I went back and forth a few times, but it was just a bunch of stops. And really at the end of third quarter, Dak has that big bomb to CeeDee Lamb. And then, the penalty that set them up inside, and then Dak hits Brevin span forward. So it's 21-14 going into the fourth quarter. And then, a missed field goal by Jake Elliott helps you here. That's another thing. You can almost kind of write off. Both teams had a couple fumbles. Both teams had a missed field goal. So in the end, you pulled it out. And I mean, look, there's a lot of things you can say about Philadelphia and the question marks going on with them because they do this all the time. It's crazy. And they were about to do it again. Remember when John mentioned last week, the thing about the Eagles is when they need to score, they go score. And they had just done that to Detroit, and they had just done that to Green Bay. And they were going to, and Saquon Barkley fumbled. Because that to me was the game. When the Cowboys went for it on fourth and goal, and basically on fourth and goal, the Cowboys went for it. They gave them the ball at the 1 yard line. And then within 2 plays, the Eagles were at their own 30. So like they're at their own 30 and they've got the ball. It's like, man, we had them still. Like, even though you went for it and didn't score, it was 4th and goal at the 1 inch line. I mean, it was 1st and goal at the 1 inch line. They're starting their drive. You're thinking, hey, get a stop and you could still get the ball back. And the Eagles had the ball in 2 plays at the 30-yard line. Like, okay, well, there was no resistance there. And then, of course, the Eagles get into Cowboys territory and then fumble Ruski and Cowboys get it back and then end up. I mean, the game still, like, the game went on and on too, like in the fourth quarter when you look at everything that happened there. But I really loved. I mean, you have the muff punt situation. The Cowboys couldn't score on that. But one thing that was really big to me is like Dak had 2 big plays to Jake Ferguson, and one where a lot of the focus on the defense was on CeeDee Lamb. And I think at this point, George Pickens was out of the game on that play too. On the second layer, Dak hit Jake Ferguson. And then, obviously, once you're into Eagles territory, you are in field goal range. And there you go from there. Questions about the timeouts for sure and all that stuff that we talked about earlier. But, man, pretty awesome. It makes Thanksgiving a lot more entertaining too, because I'm pretty stoked about the Thanksgiving Day slate now.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, beyond Thanksgiving too, I mean, Detroit went to overtime with the Giants. It took everything for them to beat them. And the Vikings look like a bottom 5 team in the NFL with JJ McCarthy at quarterback. Yeah, man, it's things have gotten very interesting. I think if you lose this game, even though all the other things remain true about the Chiefs and the Lions and the Vikings, it just feels like too big of a hole to climb out of. But that one win with the schedule ahead, because hell, even look beyond the Vikings. I think after that is the Chargers and then Commanders and Giants. It's a very winnable slate that's in front of you. And it's not that you don't have a margin for error. You can lose maybe one game. Like you can go 1-1 against the Chiefs and Lions and then just win the games that you should win. And things could get very interesting down the stretch. But I guess, one game at a time is probably the mantra they're going to preach, and it's not a bad one.
I want to say one last thing before we throw it over to John to get his thoughts. But I something that you said earlier that really did stick with me throughout this 30 minutes of talking about this. It is good to have that signature win. And I hadn't really thought about it that way until you said that. But like, I will always remember Dak running to the end zone and the forward somersault into the end zone to tie the game.
And the flip of the ball.
Yeah.
And the way he flipped the ball. That was sweet.
And the whole team just joining him for the dance party in the end zone. Like, I'll always remember that. There's another thing that I was thinking too, and I do want to shout out our friends over on the Dumb Zone who do a weekly show with Brandon Aubrey. But one thing that he always talked about was like, for him, he doesn't really care. Like, if you want to freeze the kicker, you can. I actually like that. More time to think. But I was thinking about that when the Eagles had no timeouts and Brandon Aubrey comes out. And I was thinking about all the things I would be thinking about for a game-winning field goal. Sitting there going, oh, man, I hooked the last one, and they don't have timeouts, so they're not going to free. Like, all this stuff I was just thinking about, and then just goes and knocks it in like we all knew he would.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
If you listen to Brandon Aubrey, like, whether on the Dumb Zone or, just in interviews, press conferences, whatever, he's just a very level-headed guy. It just feels like he's never too high, never too low. It doesn't surprise me that he's able to kind of maintain that demeanor, but you're absolutely right. Like, it doesn't surprise me knowing him, but any other person, that's a huge moment. It takes a special mindset, special exercises, mental exercises that he does, I think, that really help him get through that. But yeah, that was, and to not have it in your head that you just missed one, because he doesn't miss kicks. So he missed one already, but he was able to step through and knock it in. So that was a big moment, obviously, and a nice walk-off. That's his second walk-off one this year. So not bad.
5-1. It's the Chiefs on Thursday. I think we'll probably reconvene probably a little bit later in the week, and we'll get one out before the Chiefs game. We gotta do our picks and all that stuff anyways as well, keep it going. But we do always like to leave you with Father Jon Machota, who, after he's handled all of his post game duties, going to the locker room, talking to Jerry, thing, we like to get his thoughts. We like to let him like decompress, because he's just so hot headed. So like if he decompresses, then he gives like his real measured response, so we want to make sure that we get that to you. Please follow us on Instagram at One Star Cowboys Pod. We would love it if you did that, interact with us there. I know we've got a Discord set up, and we always talk to you there every once in a while. And then we're going to be doing our show with full video soon. And it looks like the month of December is when we're going to get it going. At Haymaker Network, if you'd like to know more about that. That's going to get going really, honestly, in the next 10 days or so. So we'll have a full video episode as well to go along with our normal post-game show that we have for you as well. Saad, do you have any closing thoughts before we give it to Father Jon?
No, I think we kind of covered it all. I think it was a really impressive win, and now it sets up really interesting one on Thanksgiving.
Yep, let's get it. And I'm actually was thinking this earlier when I watched the Chiefs and the Colts too. I was kind of going, I think it'd be nice if the Chiefs went ahead and got this one so they're not like even more desperate than they were today against the Colts. And when it was 20-9, I was like, okay, so the 5-6 Colts take on the whatever happens today Cowboys. And now the Colts, the Chiefs getting that win, I don't know if it's not going to change much. What happens Thursday is what happens, but it made me think if there is that desperate thing, if you believe in that at all, I don't know. I kind of don't believe in that, but I don't know. There's something about Pat Mahomes and teams who are used to getting into the playoffs finding a way, and they found a way to win today. So Thursday should be a lot of fun. And we have the Post Malone halftime show as well. For Saad Youssef, for Kent Garrison, I am Kevin Turner. We will leave you with Father Jon Machota, and then we'll talk to you next time on the One Star Cowboys podcast.
I can definitely say that's one of the most entertaining games I've ever covered. I'm recording this probably about 2 hours after the game. I'm still stunned that the Cowboys found a way to come back and win that game. Just when you factor in everything, the way that they played early on, falling behind 21-0, just the fact that when they've played good teams this year, they haven't shown the life that you saw in this game. And then really just because of the Eagles, the way that the Eagles have played this season, if you follow them, when they've played teams that have either kept it close or taken a lead, they've come right back and answered immediately. And they were given so many opportunities to answer in this game, and they never did. And that's why I'm not saying you should give credit to one side of the ball or the other, but I think the majority or more of the credit should go to the defense. You don't make that comeback without the defense playing that way and getting those stops. And it was tons of guys all over the board. And so I thought the biggest play was Osa's sack late that got them the ball back and put them in position to win the game. But the bigger picture for me is Quinnen Williams. And you just look at these last two games, and since he's been on the team, and this Cowboys defense is night and day from what we saw up until the point of that trade. And it certainly makes you wonder, man, what would this team be if they were able to work some type of Micah Parsons for Quinnen Williams and whatever trade early in the season instead of traded Micah Parsons to the Packers. Obviously, the Jets weren't able to do that at the time, but I just feel like if you have Quinnen Williams at the beginning of the season, this team's got at least 2 more, maybe 3 more wins than they do right now, because he's just changed so many things. And it's not just him making his plays himself. It's also the fact of just what he does in terms of the attention he commands and how much he helps other players make plays. And then the other big thing, too, is just when you talk to guys on the team, the way they talk about what Quinnen does for them behind the scenes as a leader, but then also just, going over certain things to do on certain plays. They're just, hey, don't do this move here, do this. This will help you. Don't waste your time doing that. This is what you got to do on this play. And just been an incredible addition to this team. And obviously that his coming to the Cowboys lines up with them getting DeMarvion Overshown back. That obviously has helped. There's just more playmaking going on in that defense. And I know that you can sit there and say, well, where was that when it was 21-0? I get that, but they deserve credit for getting the stops one after another in that second half when, if you follow the Eagles, there's been a lot of talk of the behind the scenes, how things haven't been working well with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, and that certainly didn't seem to be the case early in that game. But there's so many weapons on that Eagles defense to completely shut them down the way that they did was just extremely impressive. I didn't think there was any way they were coming back when it was down 21-0. And I think most people that follow the Cowboys and are real with themselves and being honest, they didn't think that they would come back from that either. And I'm sure that there's some players that felt that way. Of course, they're not going to say that. Of course, that's not going to be part of the post-game comments. But just an incredible win. And I mean, honestly, if you made that comeback against any team in the NFL, that's a big deal. But you made that comeback against your biggest rival. You made that comeback against the defending Super Bowl champs. And you made that comeback against what was and might still be the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. There's just a lot of levels to that clearly the best win so far of the Bryant Schottenheimer era. Clearly the best win that they've had this season. I mean, it's the best team that they've played, and to find a way to win that game, huge on what it could mean going forward. Whether they make the playoffs or not, and go on this big run, that's totally another topic. But to have the 3 games in 12 days against the Eagles, the Chiefs, and the Lions, that everyone knows that was going to be the toughest part of their schedule, going all the way back to when the schedule was released. And even though that Kansas City hasn't lived up to those expectations and Detroit hasn't been as good as maybe we thought at that time, those are still going to be highly, highly challenging games. But to start off that run with this type of win, I mean, that's the type of win that can carry over into that maybe going on a run. And I'm about 4.5 minutes into this, and it's probably, I waited too long to even mention George Pickens. He's what I say about Quinnen Williams. I think George Pickens for the offense has certainly been there too. I never thought when they made that move for him that he would play to a level to where it would be above the play of CeeDee Lamb. I thought he would be their, one of, if not the best number 2 receivers in the league, and that CD would just keep building off of what he did last year. And George has far exceeded those expectations. I mean, he has played like a legitimate number 1, one of the top receivers in the league, which is great for him going into a contract year. No question about it. He's made himself a lot of money this season, and the defense is number 1 for me, but number 2 is they're not winning this game without George Pickens playing the way that he did. And so that was huge for them as well. And then there's Dak Prescott, who just has had tons of success against the Eagles. So I guess we shouldn't be completely surprised about that, but it is one of those things where you got to admit that when that game was kind of looked like it was getting away from him, he never really wavered. And I thought it was really fitting. I think it was an 8-yard touchdown run that he had. That's about as loud as AT&T Stadium can get. And for them to close that gap and go on the run they did, and him to kind of have that exclamation point on that run, I thought was just huge. One of the biggest plays of his career. And he's in a good spot. He didn't really play great for a couple games there, Arizona, Denver. But I think these last couple of games, he's right back to being the guy that he was at the beginning of the season, where, people talked about him being in the MVP conversations and things like that. There's not many players at that position playing better than Dak Prescott right now. And I don't think you can do this comeback without some very strong quarterback play. So like I said at the beginning, there's tons of people that deserve credit. There's tons of guys that stepped up big. I mean, heck, you can just talk about that forced fumble that Elijah Clark had when he's just getting destroyed on special teams, when he keeps fighting and he gets on the field. And then Trent Sig falls on the ball. And I mean, there's just a ton of plays in this game that all over the place that you can point to a big play here, big play there. And there was also a lot of mistakes. I mean, you don't fall down 21-0 without making a ton of mistakes. Obviously, Kevontae Turpin had a very costly fumble. Getting down to the red zone. Dak obviously didn't have some of his best throws down there that you can be critical of. But in the end, almost everybody stepped up at some point and made a play that contributed to this win. And most surprising win I can think of from the Cowboys in a while, certainly beyond this season. And maybe I overvalued the Eagles, having watched them quite a bit recently, where even though when they weren't kicked in high gear, when they played good teams and they needed to step up, they did. And there were so many opportunities for them to step up and make the big play in the second half to really just score another touchdown and maybe, seal this game, and they just never did. And so I guess you can give some blame to them. And I'm sure in their locker room, they're not giving credit to the Cowboys. They're looking at themselves, but you got to give a lot of credit to that Cowboys defense. I certainly did not think we would be at this point by week 3 or 4 with how bad that defense looked. It just never looked like it would ever get to a point like this. And certainly, like I said, you get DeMarvion Overshown and Quinnen Williams, Savone Ravel, and some of these other guys added to it. Malik Hooker back healthy, Donovan Wilson. I mean, it's not just one guy, but making the move for Logan Wilson. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that go into it, don't get me wrong, but I certainly didn't think that they could play that type of defense against that type of team if we go back really just a few weeks ago. And so, like I've said on previous shows, I don't know that they'll get on a run that'll get them in the playoffs, but we're continuing to see now in back-to-back weeks some things that should have people pretty optimistic going into that offseason, especially on defense, because of how bad things looked. And now the fact that you do have a cornerstone piece in Quinnen Williams, but then you also have 2 first-round picks and things that you can add to the defensive room. I can see there's definitely a lot of light at the end of the tunnel that I was not seeing a month ago. And so I think that that's a really positive thing there. And certainly George Pickens. I mean, Jerry Jones is not letting George Pickens leave. So whether it's a long, dragged out franchise tag or whatever, I just do not see him playing in another team's uniform next season. So I know there's still plenty of this season to go, but there's also a lot of things to be positive about after the season's over going into the following season. And so just a fun game to watch here at AT&T Stadium. If you're here, I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you're watching on TV, I'm sure you enjoyed it. But 15 years covering this team, not many games like this one today. That's for sure.
I never thought I'd say this in my life,